Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving deep into Nepali Rudraksha beads, specifically the One Mukhi kind. Your research was really fascinating. It seems like there's a lot more to these beads than you might think at first glance.
There really is a lot of history and, well, mystery. We're going to be exploring the spiritual side of things, the cultural significance, and even some scientific findings.
I'm excited to get into all of that. But first, maybe for anyone who's not familiar, can we start with the basics? What exactly are Rudraksha beads?
Sure, a Rudraksha bead is basically the seed of the Elaeocarpus ganitris tree.
Okay, so just a seed. Interesting.
Yeah, but they have a long history of use in spiritual practices, especially in Hinduism. Each bead actually has a different number of faces called mukhis, and these determine, well, the unique properties of the bead.
So the Mukhis are kind of like what gives the bead its own specific energy?
You could say that, yeah, but today we're focusing on the rarest of them all, the One Mukhi Rudraksha.
Right, the single-face bead. What's so special about it?
Well, in Hinduism, it's associated with Lord Shiva, who represents pure consciousness. It's believed to be incredibly powerful.
And it's said to choose its wearer, right? Like you can't just go out and buy one. It has to kind of call to you.
That's the belief, yes.
Like the bead has a mind of its own. Fascinating. So what kind of impact do people believe these beads have?
Many believe it can help someone grow spiritually and even go deeper in meditation. It can also help with mental clarity, inner peace, that sort of thing.
What about the third eye chakra?
Right. Some people believe it can awaken the third eye chakra, which is, all about intuition and insight.
It's like opening up that inner vision.
Mm.
Incredible. Now, in your research, you talked about different types of One Mukhi Rudraksha, all from Nepal. Let's start with the, what'd you call it, the king of the hill.
The pure round one mukhi. It's incredibly rare. Imagine this. Only one pure round one mukhi forms every 5 to 10 years. Sometimes even less often than that.
Wow. No wonder it's so sought after.
Exactly, and that rarity comes with pretty big price tag, hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially. They're often sought after by, well, spiritual leaders and people like that.
That makes sense. But what about the rest of us? Are there more, let's say, attainable options still within that One Mukhi family?
Of course. There's the Nepali Annamukhi, also called the underdeveloped One Mukhi. It's a bit more accessible.
What's the difference?
It might have 0 lines or a line that's not fully developed, so it may not be quite as powerful. Still, many people consider it a good alternative.
So it has some of the same benefits, but, well, a slightly friendlier price.
Think more in the range of, say, $16,000 to start.
Okay, still a significant investment, but definitely more approachable than hundreds of thousands. Now, you also mentioned something called a Nepali One Mukhi Sawar. What makes that one unique?
That one's actually a twin Rudraksha, naturally formed. It grows attached to other Mukhi Rudraksha beads.
Really?
Yeah, so you might find one growing on a 5, 6, 7, or 8 Mukhi bead. The price depends on, well, which Mukhi it's attached to.
That's really interesting. Like each bead has its own personality almost.
Then there's the Nirakarmukhi One Mukhi. This one's a bit of a mystery, honestly.
How so?
Well, it's a One Mukhi but doesn't have any lines at all.
Wait, no lines. So how can you even tell it's a One Mukhi?
It's a good question. But it's believed to have the energy of a One Mukhi. And because it's so rare, it's even more expensive than the Annamukhi, about 25 to 50% higher.
So even without the classic One Mukhi line, it's still considered powerful?
Yeah.
Okay, that's 4 types of One Mukhi, right?
Right. The last one is the crescent moon-shaped Nepali Ek Mukhi.
What a name.
It's a delicate bead shaped like a crescent moon with sharp edges. And, believe it or not, some say it's just as potent as the pure round One Mukhi.
Really? A tiny, fragile, moon-shaped bead has the same power as that incredibly rare and perfectly round one.
Wow, indeed. And, as you might expect, it's also extremely rare. Comes with a price tag to match. You're looking at around $99,000 to start.
Okay, so we've got these 5 types of One Mukhi from Nepal, all with different looks and, of course, prices. But they all seem to hold a powerful energy. Now, in our research, we also came across the term Indian Ek Mukhi. Is that just a different name for one of these types, or?
That's where things get a little tricky. Indian Rudraksha beads don't actually have holes naturally. So what some sellers try to pass off as a One Mukhi from India is, well, something else entirely.
How do people wear them then if they don't have holes?
They're often capped or made into pendants. But the key is these beads are actually called Rudraksha. And they might not be suitable for everyone. In fact, they could even have negative effects on some people.
So it's really important to know the difference, especially if you're thinking about, investing in a Rudraksha bead.
Exactly. It's not just about the appearance, it's about understanding the energy and potential effects. Choosing a Rudraksha is a very personal journey. Do your research. Make sure you're getting an authentic bead, one that aligns with your, well, intentions.
You've definitely highlighted the importance of authenticity. Now, something else I found fascinating in the research was the science behind these beads. I mean, it's not every day you see scientific studies mixed with spiritual practices. What have scientists discovered about these seeds?
It's pretty interesting. Research from Banaras Hindu University in India found that Nepali Rudraksha beads contain, well, a whole bunch of different elements. Copper, iron, manganese, barium, and even gold and silver.
That's amazing. That's not what I expected. Do scientists think these elements are what give the beads their energy?
Well, it's not a simple cause and effect, but the presence of these elements definitely supports the idea that Rudraksha beads have these unique electromagnetic and paramagnetic properties.
Paramagnetic.
It means they have a weak attraction to magnetic fields.
Interesting. So how could that affect us?
Well, these properties could influence blood circulation and even activate the chakras. Some people believe it's like having this subtle energy field around you, promoting balance and calm.
So it's working on a level we can't see, but maybe we can feel. Speaking of which, let's talk about chakras. I know they're important in yogic traditions. Can you refresh my memory a bit? What exactly is a chakra?
Basically, think of chakras as swirling wheels of energy located along the spine. And each chakra governs different aspects of us, our basic instincts, our emotions, our spiritual connection. It's all connected.
And One Mukhi Rudraksha is believed to specifically activate the Ajna chakra, right? Which is the third eye.
That's right. It's all about intuition, insight, that deeper awareness.
So wearing a One Mukhi is like tuning into that higher frequency, becoming more intuitive.
Exactly. It's about helping you on your journey toward greater awareness, connecting with your inner wisdom.
Like that. It's not just about wearing a bead. It's about connecting with something deeper within.
Right. And this connection to the third eye brings us to another interesting idea, Kundalini energy, which your research also touched on.
Yes, and I'm definitely curious to learn more about that. It sounds like a powerful force. But maybe before we go there, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back to explore the connection between Rudraksha and Kundalini energy. We're back, and, well, I'm really intrigued by this whole idea of Kundalini energy. I have to admit, it's always seemed kind of mysterious to me.
It's definitely a fascinating concept, and it comes from, those ancient yogic traditions. You can think of Kundalini energy as this dormant force that sits at the base of your spine.
Like a coiled serpent, right? Waiting to be awakened.
Exactly, a coiled serpent waiting to be awakened. And when it is, well, it's believed to rise up through the chakras, leading to a state of enlightenment.
So the chakras play a big role here. I know we touched on them earlier, but maybe we can back up a bit. For those who aren't as familiar with, yogic traditions, what exactly is a chakra?
Think of them as these energy centers located along your spine. Each one governs different aspects of our well-being, both physically and emotionally and spiritually.
And when this Kundalini energy is awakened, it basically flows through these chakras.
That's the idea. It clears blockages, brings them into balance.
So it's like clearing a path, removing any obstacles that might be holding us back. And when that energy reaches the crown chakra at the top of the head, that's what leads to enlightenment.
Yeah, it's seen as this profound union between individual consciousness and universal consciousness, a state of bliss, clarity, and deep spiritual understanding. But, Kundalini awakening, it's a gradual process, and it's often best to have guidance from an experienced teacher.
Right. You don't want to just jump into something like that without, proper preparation. But how does a Rudraksha bead, specifically a One Mukhi, fit into all of this?
Well, with its connection to Lord Shiva and, pure consciousness, it's believed that the One Mukhi has a really strong resonance with the third eye chakra, which is located right between the eyebrows.
And the third eye chakra is all about intuition, insight, that deeper level of awareness. So by wearing a One Mukhi, you're basically strengthening that connection.
Exactly. It's not that the bead directly causes the awakening, but it can act as a sort of catalyst. It supports your spiritual practices, deepens your connection to that inner energy.
So it's like a tool to help you along the way. But what about those who, aren't necessarily focused on Kundalini awakening? Can they still benefit from these beads?
Of course. Even if you're not actively working with Kundalini energy, wearing a kumar, One Mukhi Rudraksha can bring positive changes. More awareness, more intuition. It's a reminder to connect with yourself, cultivate that inner wisdom.
Like a little nudge from the universe,
Yeah.
reminding you to tap into that inner knowing. Now, speaking of connecting with that inner wisdom, I know our research talked about a process called Rudraksha Diksha, which is recommended before you start wearing a Rudraksha. Can you explain what that is?
Rudraksha Diksha is essentially a process of energizing and purifying the bead before you wear it. It's like an activation, aligning its energy with yours.
So you're setting an intention for its use, establishing a connection. What does that process actually involve?
Well, typically it involves cleansing the bead, usually with salt water. And then there's something called abhishekam, which is a ritual bathing. You might use water, milk, honey, various offerings. And chanting specific mantras is also common.
It sounds like a really beautiful and intentional process, honoring the sacredness of the bead. But once you've done that initial preparation, what about daily care? How do you make sure you're, well, treating your Rudraksha with respect?
Taking care of your Rudraksha is actually pretty simple. Just avoid any harsh chemicals or extreme temperatures. Clean it regularly with fresh water and a soft cloth, and then store it in a safe place when you're not wearing it.
It sounds manageable, but I know our research also talked about certain times when you're not supposed to wear a Rudraksha, like during certain activities or even times of the month.
Right. There are some traditional guidelines, and they come from a place of, deep reverence for the energy of these beads. For example, some traditions say not to wear Rudraksha during what's called sutak. It's a period of mourning. Others say to avoid wearing them during menstruation or during intimate activities. And some even say not to wear them while you sleep.
So it's not just a fashion statement. It's about honoring the energy of the bead and using it for its intended purpose.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing the sacredness and being mindful, bringing that intention into your life.
Our research also mentioned something about properly handling a Rudraksha after the wearer dies. Can you elaborate on that?
It's an interesting tradition. It's believed that, well, because the bead has absorbed the wearer's energy over time, it should be treated with respect even after they're gone. So it's either cremated with the body or passed down through the family.
It's like recognizing that connection between the person and the bead. Wow. It's fascinating to me that there's actually been scientific research done on these beads. I mean, you don't often see science and spirituality, coming together like that.
It is quite interesting to see those two worlds intersect.
So what have researchers discovered? Are they starting to understand what gives Rudraksha beads their unique properties?
Well, researchers have been studying the composition of Rudraksha beads, especially those from Nepal. And they found that they contain this unique blend of elements like copper, iron, manganese, even gold and silver.
That's pretty amazing. It's not just your average seed, is it? Do they think that's what gives them their energy?
It's not a simple answer, but the presence of these elements does seem to support that idea that Rudraksha beads have these unique electromagnetic and paramagnetic properties.
Paramagnetic meaning?
It means they're weakly attracted to magnetic fields.
So even if science can't fully explain it, they're starting to find evidence that supports, well, what people have been saying for centuries. It's like bridging the gap between the seen and the unseen.
Exactly. And as research continues, we might learn even more. Who knows what other discoveries await us?
That's exciting to think about. Now, before we wrap up, our research mentioned a specific website, Rudraalaya.com, as a trusted source for authentic Nepali Rudraksha beads. Have you heard of them?
Yes, I've heard of them. They have a good reputation within the Rudraksha community. They offer lots of information on the different types, which is helpful for anyone new to these beads.
That's good to know. We'll definitely put a link in the show notes for our listeners. But before we go, I think it would be helpful to offer some guidance for anyone who, might be feeling drawn to Rudraksha and wants to learn more.
The first thing I'd say is to approach them with respect and intention. These aren't just fashion accessories. They hold deep spiritual meaning.
Right. It's not about following a trend. It's about connecting with that energy.
Exactly. And finding a reputable source is crucial. Like we talked about, there are fake beads out there. You want to make sure you're getting an authentic Nepali Rudraksha.
Our research did point to Rudraalaya.com as trustworthy, but is there anything else people should look for?
Look for sellers who specialize in Rudraksha beads. People who really understand them. Ask questions. Read reviews. And, well, trust your gut feeling. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't.
It's good advice. Do your research, compare options, and go with your intuition.
Exactly. And once you've found a bead that resonates with you, learn about its properties and how to care for it.
We talked about cleansing and energizing the bead through, what was it called? Rudraksha Diksha. But what about day-to-day care? Are there any no-nos?
The key is to avoid harsh chemicals and extreme temperatures. Clean it regularly with just fresh water and a soft cloth, and store it safely when you're not wearing it.
And it's good to be mindful of those traditional guidelines too, right? About when not to wear the bead.
Right. Those are in place to honor the bead and its energy. Not everyone follows them strictly, but it's important to be aware of those traditions and then make a conscious choice.
Finding what feels right for you, honoring the deeper meaning.
Precisely. And remember, the journey with the Rudraksha is personal. Be open to those subtle shifts, the moments of clarity, and, that potential for deeper connection to yourself and, well, the world around you.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's not about following rules, it's about allowing the bead to guide you on your own path.
And who knows what you might discover along the way? Peace, intuition, that deeper connection to the present moment.
That's the amazing thing about these beads. They hold so much potential, and each person's experience is unique.
It reminds us that sometimes the most powerful transformations come from, well, the simplest things, like a seed.
That's a perfect thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us today on this deep dive into the world of One Mukhi Nepali Rudraksha beads. We hope you've learned something new and maybe even feel inspired to, well, embark on your own Rudraksha journey.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights. And remember, even though our deep dive is coming to an end, your exploration is just beginning.
It really is amazing when you think about it. Something as small as a seed can hold so much history and tradition, and even, spark scientific curiosity. It's like we've discovered this whole hidden world within these little beads.
I agree. It's quite remarkable. And we've only just scratched the surface.
Definitely. But before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on the ethical side of things. Our research talked about, handling Rudraksha beads respectfully, not just in daily life, but also, well, even after the wearer's death. It's clear these beads are seen as more than just, decorations.
Yes, there's a deep reverence surrounding them. And those traditions, those guidelines, they reflect that. Like the practice of cremating them with the body or passing them down.
Yeah.
It really shows the connection people feel between the wearer and the bead.
It is beautiful. It's like the bead has absorbed their energy, their experiences. It becomes a part of them.
And it emphasizes that these beads, well, they're not just something you buy and sell like any other object. They're treated with respect, reverence. You wouldn't see that with a typical piece of jewelry.
That makes you wonder, right? Like, maybe we should all approach objects with a little more intention, more respect.
I think that's a great takeaway from our deep dive today, recognizing that connection, that interconnectedness of everything, seen and unseen.
Well said. So as we finish up our exploration of these One Mukhi Nepali Rudraksha beads, what are your final thoughts for our listeners? What would you say to someone who's feeling, drawn to these beads, maybe thinking about getting one?
I'd say be open. Keep an open mind and heart. Do your research, find a good source, and most importantly, listen to your intuition. If you feel connected to a certain bead, there's a reason.
Trust that inner guidance. Let the bead lead you on your own journey.
Exactly. Remember, everyone's experience is different. There's no one right way. Just be open to those shifts, those moments of clarity, the connection you might feel to yourself and, well, everything around you.
Beautifully put. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us. This deep dive has been truly eye-opening.
My pleasure. And to all our listeners out there, may your exploration of these amazing seeds be full of wonder and, well, new discoveries.